Hello, everyone. Welcome. Glad you can join us on this Tuesday afternoon or whatever time it is where you are in the world. Thank you for joining us for this beginning genealogy program. You've tuned in for the Allison Show. I'm doing the introduction. I'm going to do the presentation and the Q&A. So it's going to be a fun time. So welcome. Glad you guys are all here. I am your speaker today. I am Allison DePrey Singleton. I am a genealogy librarian at the Genealogy Center here at the Allen County Public Library in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And I am delighted to be talking to you about getting started with your family history. Now, many of you may be new, many of you may be seasoned researchers and just want a refresher or are interested in what I might be talking about today. Whatever the case may be, whatever brings you here, I do have an understanding that there's varying degrees of experience. So I just want to make sure that we are going to cover all sorts of information. So some of this may be a little bit more advanced, some of it may not be. So let's talk about what we're going to see with genealogy, starting with a question. So I'm going to go ahead and move these slides forward. Okay, so when you are getting started with your family history, one of the first things is you want to start with yourself. What do you know about your background? You want to talk to your family. Now, the thing is when we get started with genealogy, and this is where the title comes from, it's usually born out of a question. Somewhere, somehow, there's a question that we have about genealogy. It may be, where did my parents get married? Or, there's this random person in the family plot and I'm curious about who they are. Or perhaps it's that family mystery that you just don't understand and you want to dig further into it. There's always a question that brings about the research. It makes you go, I want to know more. So you want to take yourself, you know the most about yourself, and then you're going to go back and you're going to try to get a little bit more information about your parents and kind of write this down and understand what you're looking at. So you want to look at your parents and your grandparents. You also want to make sure to collect information on aunts and uncles and maybe even the siblings of your grandparents if you know them. So any sort of information that you can remember, you want to document. Now, something to keep in mind is that you know more than you think you do. A lot of people are surprised at the amount of knowledge that they have. So make sure that you are keeping that in mind. And then the other thing is this might sound crazy, there's no such thing as a normal family. A normal family is something that you see on television. It's something that you would see in a movie. It's those two parents and the two kids and a dog and maybe a cat. It's not real life. Real life has a lot of different layers to it. Our ancestors are living, breathing people who had good things and bad things in their lives. And you want to keep that in mind as you are doing research. You may be digging up the skeletons in your family's closet. You may be finding things that you're thinking, oh, I didn't realize that that was a part of my family heritage, or, oh, I didn't realize that that would come up in my family history research. So be prepared. You never know what you will find. I just want to prepare you as you're getting started with any journeys with your family history research. So you don't want to have a set family tree in mind as you're getting started. You're also going to find things that make the family tree charts a little bit more difficult. You're going to find multiple marriages. You're going to find divorces, even back in the 1800s and maybe even before then. You're going to find divorces when you think, oh, that's not common. Well, yes, they actually were a little bit more common than you think. You're going to find death. You're going to find remarriage. You're going to find the skeletons in your closet, the murder, the craziness that you are like sitting back going, is this a real thing? So It's really interesting to look at these family trees and you want to get that information. Now, one of the things I put in here is family. Go to your family for help. I'm also talking about going to all of your relatives, asking them questions. So you have your own question to start with, but ask your relatives as well. See what they know. What information can they give you? You want to go with your oldest living relatives, but you also want to go to the generations below you. I know that might sound crazy, but stories are passed down through different generations. So even if you and a sibling experience the same exact family event, you will have different experiences. And when you tell your children and your sibling tells their children about that same event, it's going to be from a different perspective. So that is how things are passed down generation to generation. So that is one way that you want to make sure to talk to relatives that are on the same generational level and even below about family stories they might know. But also, you never know who's in the right place at the right time for that great juicy story about great Aunt Myrtle. You don't know what information you can get from family members. So make sure that you're asking everyone. And then you want to take those family documents, those wonderful family documents that you may have. And that's another reason to talk to all of your relatives. You don't know who's getting what family documents. So you want to get anything and everything. So birth certificates, death certificates, which are relatively new, keep that in mind. Marriage certificates, military records, family Bibles. You never know what you're going to find. And then you want to take that information and start putting it into a chart. And this is a very traditional chart. And as you will find, these traditional charts are not always the way life is. So you have to make sure that you are looking at it and changing it for your use. These are just kind of the bones to your family. This is just kind of a way to keep it set in your mind about the generations that go back. You can change any of these forms to work for you and your family history. So make sure that you are doing so. And then the whole goal of this is to put the information in and then realize, okay, this is what I'm missing. So perhaps you're able to fill this out all the way to your grandparents, but your great grandparents are where you don't really have a lot of information. And maybe you roughly have your grandparents' date of births and maybe deaths, but maybe not the marriages. It's filling in the blanks. That's the first step. But then that second step is also adding the stories. So adding that meat to the bones of your tree. So this is truly the first step, the bones. And then the second step is adding those stories. And we're going to talk about a little bit of each. I want to make sure that you can get the information to add to the bones of your family tree, but also to add to the meat, add to the stories, add to the understanding of your family. And I did give you some information on, should pop up here. And you should see the family search genealogy research forums. So I wanted to make sure to give you information on how to find different trees and charts. I gave you a blank family tree chart, but then there's a lot more information that you can find within these charts. You can find things like a research log, so you know where you're actually getting all the information, or a family group sheet, which if you haven't done genealogy before, what that is basically the parents and the children on one sheet of paper. So you have that information in one place. So you want to make sure to check out that information. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about what you want to do. Is you want to take the information from your family. And remember, there's always a grain of truth in every family story, but it's up to you to figure out what that grain of truth is. Because every time a story is passed down, it's like a game of telephone. It gets a little bit morphed. So you want to make sure that you're keeping an open mind when you're getting started with this research. and taking that information and looking for the facts to back up the stories. And then you're taking those family documents and you're comparing all this information and researching. Research is the biggest component. And something I have on this screen is a microphone, because I want to remind you that it is a really good idea to go ahead and record any of these family stories that you guys are starting to collect. Now, I want you guys to think about recording and just have it in the back of your mind. You don't have to use a professional microphone or device. You can use a cell phone and just hit record. Make sure you get people's permission first, but it's incredibly helpful to have that as you're getting started with the research, because you can go back to it and refer to it. And then not only that, it's also amazing just to have the stories so you can share them with your family members and eventually the younger generations as well. So make sure that you're recording the stories that you're starting to get as you ask questions. Okay, where to start online? Now, what I would recommend doing to most people when they come into the library is I usually get them started on Ancestry. So we're going to talk about Ancestry first, but something I want you to know in your handout is that for every website we talk about, I tell you if it's a paid website or if it's a free website. I want you to know right off the bat if it's something that you can access for free from home. Now, Ancestry is a paid database and it is a paid website. It is something we offer here at the library for free, and most public libraries do have the library edition of Ancestry. So I want to make sure that you guys know that and are able to access as needed. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at Ancestry. And it should be coming up on your screen. If you don't see the Ancestry, please let me know. And I did have it go to my version, my personal login, because I wanted you guys to see what it looks like from home if you do have that. It is a different search format. They have changed it. So you do see it. Perfect. So the search is actually over to the side now, which is a little bit different. But when you're getting started with genealogy, Ancestry is truly the easiest place to get started. So, and I see that somebody has put in that prices are going up with Ancestry, and that is true. I did get that email as well. So it's a little bit, it's expensive. It can be an expensive thing to maintain. So utilize your public library, utilize the free resources that you can. So we're going to talk about Ancestry just because it is so easy, but we're going to cover free resources too. So don't be discouraged. So we're going to do a quick search. We're going to do a search for Walt Disney. I think he's a really good candidate. Now, I put in his birth date as 1901. I happen to know it's around then. Possible location. I start typing Los Angeles and we start getting different suggestions. You want to go with the possible location suggestions that Ancestry has popping up. So we're going to go with that first one and hit search or enter, whatever you prefer. Once you do a search, you're going to start seeing different things pop up. Now, I'm in my personal version, which is the US edition. So you can see that it's blurred out for the Canadian records. Now, most public libraries have the US version. Unless you're in a different country, you may have a different version at your public library. But that's why the Canadian records are blurred out. If I were on the library version here, it would pop up because we do have the World Edition at the Genealogy Center. So we have Find a Grave, we have all these different things. So I can click on any of these documents. So Walter Elias Disney, around 40, 1901, born in Chicago, living in Los Angeles, Walt Disney Productions, and we can see right away that this is Walt Disney. This is our guy. It's always fun to look at the original documents, and you can typically get more information from the originals than from the summaries. Also, people wrote in cursive and print. So you can see that there are different types of handwriting on this page alone. That could make it more difficult for somebody who's trying to do a transcription. So you want to make sure to look at the original because there's going to be typos, there's going to be issues. Another thing to remember is that spelling doesn't count in genealogy. The whole concept of legal names is relatively new, and dates can be off because these documents, yeah, while they were legal documents, the whole concept of birth and death certificates are a new concept. Social security cards, new concept. So while today, in today's society, 2022, legal names, you have to get legally changed. There's a whole system for it. You are that name from birth to death unless you go through the whole process of changing names, etc. Prior, not a thing. You could have a different name on a birth certificate, death certificate. You could have a different name on every other document that you find. So just make sure that you have your detective hat on and you're trying to figure out what the other pieces are that make sense. I see that somebody's related to Walt Disney. That's pretty cool. So you can see from this document, we have a description, we have telephone, we have age, place of birth, etc. And then we have a description of what Walt Disney looked like, scar on the upper lip and left eye. I didn't know he had a scar until I saw this document for the first time. So it's kind of interesting to learn. You get the signature. So this is his signature, and that's pretty iconic right here. You can see right there. And then also you can take a look at this and realize that this is the old man draft. So this is for gentlemen who were born between certain days. And this is for in case they're needed during World War II. If you find a draft card, it doesn't mean that they actually fought. It just means that they were a part of the draft. So if you scroll down, you can also find suggested records. And this is what makes Ancestry so incredibly easy. You have all of these suggested records of possible Walt Disney. Now, the thing is when you're looking at the suggested records, a lot of times there's mistakes. You could find that there are two men with the same name, Walt Disney, coming up, and you're finding duplicate, like 1910 census. There's two 1910 census in here. That's an example. And they're for two different men. So that is a possibility. Now, Walt Disney is famous enough that this is pretty carefully curated. They're pulling this information from different trees and other pieces of resources and trying to figure out how to give you more suggestions. And you can see right here that there's a ton of information in here. And I am going to go back over here to that 1910 census. Now, the census is one of the things that is an incredible resource for genealogists. When you're working on family history, it's the easiest way to get your family members back. Census records are taken every 10 years in the United States from 1790 to current day. So the last one is in 2020. Now they're released every 72 years. So we just had the 1950 census released in April. So you're going to find people on the census who were born before 1950. Now, when you're looking at the census, again, there's going to be mistakes. There's going to be little pieces of information that are questionable. But let's look at the original. You have to remember that they went door to door and they got paid per household, the census takers. So they didn't necessarily stay to get the correct information, and they didn't also necessarily talk to the people in the home. So keep that in mind as you are doing your research. Now we can see that there's Roy, Walter, and Ruth. Those are the three siblings, and the parents are Elias and Flora. You can see where the parents were born and their parents. You can see that Elias was a farmer, General Farm. He was his immigration year, he was naturalized. So there's a lot of fun information. You can find out, okay, can read and write, attending school, etc. So make sure that you are checking this out and looking for information on the census. And take a look at the rest of the different records in here and see what could be beneficial. So you have marriages, you have that 1950 census, and each census is slightly different. You're going to find more and less information based on the census. And then you can click on different people like Elias and try to get back further. So we can get him in 1880 when he's living with his parents. And you can see that he was born in Canada and his parents were born in, well, his father was born in Canada, mother was born in Ireland. So you can pull more information and try to continue to go back from there. And you can see at a certain point, I would need a world version of Ancestry to get to the Canadian records, unless I go to a different database. So we're going to go ahead and back out of here and go to Family Search. So you should be seeing Family Search on your screen now, the website, familysearch.org. This is a free website. It is run by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. It is a free place to do research. You can create a family tree on here as well. Now, the one thing I will say is that you do have to create a free account. You go up here to create account, you enter your information, and you hit continue, and it asks for a username and password for you to create, and then go from there. It is an incredible resource. Now, you can start with searching records, and I will be completely honest, I don't begin by searching records. It's not as easy as Ancestry. And I'm going to get rid of this little bar. So we're going to go ahead and do another search for Walt Disney. And it's filling in for me in 1901. And I'm going to do a search. It's asking me to log in, so I'm logging into my personal account. And here we are. So we have been able to pull up information that is applicable to our search. Now, the thing you'll notice is that we're getting a lot of death information to begin with. So obituary, burial, there's immigration information, and then we can continue to scroll down. So we have some more obituaries and public records. Now, let's say we want to find something specific. So let's go to collection. You can then choose which collection that you're getting information out of. So maybe you really do want to look and see if you can get Canadian records. Well, if that's the case, we would want to search for the father, not Walt. And then you can also look and see, okay, there's military, there's probate. I can also just go to show all 8. So you can see that there's different pieces of information. So let's go ahead and say, I want the census records. And now it's going to bring up those census records. Now we looked at that. We looked at a 1910 census. So let's go ahead and click on that. And so this is where we're finding somebody named Walter Disney in California in 1910 as a hired hand. So you're getting a different piece of information. But if we go to that 1940, I happen to know his wife is Lillian. So if we go here, I can then click on this. And so it's going to bring up that census record just like you would find in Ancestry. It's not going to be highlighted necessarily, but you can find the name pretty easily. And you can see within their household that they also have a butler, a cook, and a nurse. We're not surprised. It's Walt Disney. So you can look and see more information about him and his wife and children, motion picture producer, own business. So I think whoever did this census was pretty interested in that. 5,000 plus, that is, you have to go to the top of the page on this one. And then you can see the income in 1939. So there's a lot of great pieces of information within Family Search. You just have to search it a little bit differently. And it may not give you all of the suggested records like you would find in Ancestry. So what's interesting is when I do click on this, you can see that it says attached in family tree to Walter Elias Disney. So there's already a family tree with this information in it. Now, one thing, sources 103. What you can do is you can go ahead and go to that person's tree and see what resources are already in here. Now, I personally do not use other people's trees as the gospel truth. I go into other people's trees to look for their sources. You can use sources that somebody else has found, but I highly recommend doing your own research and trying to figure out what research you still have to do after looking at somebody's tree. So it looks like we have a lot of great sources in here. So you can grab any of these and do a little bit more research and add that to your own tree. So with Family Search, the trees it's basically one big tree. So when you're creating information, when you're creating a tree in Family Search, other people can change it. So you can see right here, this is one person, this is one tree, and all of these people have added information or made changes to this tree. So make sure that you keep that in mind as you're doing research, and we'll talk a little bit more about organization in a little bit. But I wanted to make sure that you knew that that's a thing. Now, something that you'll notice is as you're searching, perhaps you're not finding the records that you're looking for. So something that I always recommend in Family Search is to also search in the Research Wiki and the catalog. So I'm first going to go to the Research Wiki. If it loads, there it is. This is especially helpful if you're researching in a place that you're unfamiliar with. So let's say you're researching an ancestor and you are living in whatever location you're at, and your ancestor is from Defiance County, Ohio. Because of that, you're going to want to look at Defiance County, Ohio, and see what pieces of information you can find. So first of all, you can see what the parent counties are. That's incredibly helpful because it will tell you if you need to be looking somewhere else for the records, depending on the year it was organized. You can also look and see when birth and death and marriage and court, and when all these types of records started. And then you can also see, okay, statewide registrations didn't begin until 1908 and general compliance years unknown. So there is a possibility you may not find what you're looking for. And then you can go through and get a little bit more information about this specific location. Now, this is specific to a county. Let's say we want Ohio. Let's see if we can find more information. Once you go to a state, there's record types over here that could potentially help you a little bit further, especially with church records. Those are usually at the state level rather than the county level. But it also gives you a nice map. You can see where the counties are located and maybe start clicking on them to see if there's more information and what you might want to find out. Now, what's really helpful when you go to another location, I'm going to go to Germany, is it will also give you information on German genealogical word list, Latin word list, French word list. It gives you information on script and how to write letters in German or emails, depending. But you can find more information through these Germany research tools. And that's getting pretty advanced. If you're going to another country, that is pretty advanced. I just want to make sure that you know that this information exists once you get that far. There's a ton of information. It's a good way to at least get an introduction to what a different country looks like, how the boundary lines might have changed, where your family might be from in regards to what it might have been. I picked Germany because Germany is a baby country. So you want to keep in mind that this is when Germany was created. It is much younger than the United States even. So if you're looking for German research, you're going to be probably looking in a lot of different places. Okay, the other thing I wanted to note is that the catalog is incredibly helpful for research. not everything is indexed. So you may be looking for something a little bit more specific. So let's go ahead and do a search for, I'm going to stay in the Midwest. We're going to go to Illinois. And then you can go to places within if you would like, and you can pick a location. So let's go ahead and I'm going to do McHenry. So McHenry County, Illinois. You can then look and see, are there court records? There are court records. Well, how do I know what's available? Well, you can go over here and click online and update. So then you can say, okay, these are things that are specifically online that I can do research with. So I'm going to go back to McHenry County and go to those court records. And these are online. So I can see, okay, probate packets. That's kind of interesting. And here they are, digitized with no index. If there's a little magnifying glass, that means it's indexed. The little camera means that it is online. And what this is basically microfilm that you are then going to go through. So just letting you know that not everything is indexed, not everything is as easy to find. If you see a little reel, that means it's microfilm still and it hasn't been digitized yet. But Family Search is doing an incredible job of digitizing their material. All right, I did want to mention Find My Past. It's another paid website. We do have access to it here. So you can see once I click on it, it's already logging me in as the Allen County Public Library. This is an excellent website if you are doing research in the United Kingdom. They are based in London, so there's a lot of really amazing information here. And you can find, even interestingly, there's a lot of Catholic records within Find My Past. So this is an excellent resource if that's what you are working on. I'm not going to dig too deep in the last two. And then we have MyHeritage. MyHeritage is another excellent database. This one is based in Israel. So there's a lot of great Eastern Europe and pieces of information in MyHeritage. They also have a DNA program, just like Ancestry. So this is where a lot of people do their DNA testing. Wanted to make sure that you knew that this is a really good resource if you are doing that Eastern European research. And again, we do offer it here for free at the Genealogy Center. I'm going to go to newspapers online next. This is where you're going to be going beyond that initial working on the bones of your family tree and looking for the stories. Now, it is helpful to use newspapers to fill in things like birth and death when you're not finding the birth records or death records because they didn't exist at that time period. So maybe there's some sort of indication of a birth or a death in one of these newspapers. So I have a lot of different newspapers online that are options for you. The three paid ones are first. So we have Genealogy Bank, newspapers.com, and Newspaper Archive. And we offer them here for free, but it's up to you to what would be the most helpful and maybe what you have access to. And a lot of these different websites do free, like weekends or a certain part of their collections for free. So keep an eye on their social media because a lot of times you can find that information. Newspapers.com is owned by Ancestry. Genealogy Bank is part of Newsbank, and then newspapers.com. So they all have slightly different newspapers. Another thing to keep in mind is copyright is a really big issue when it comes to newspapers. And many newspapers after around 1924 to current day are not available online. So you have to keep that in the back of your mind as you're doing research. And you may want to look at these websites and see, do they even have the newspapers I'm seeking? Do they even exist digitized before you even start to look at, do I want to pay for one of these? So I'm going to go ahead and click on them really quickly. We're not going to do a quick search or anything, But Genealogy Bank, this is what it looks like if you're going to pay for it. You can do a first and a last name and where they lived and do a quick search. Now, they have modern obituaries as well, but it doesn't cover everywhere. So what's interesting is being at the Genealogy Center, I happen to know that the Fort Wayne papers are not part of the current day obituaries in Genealogy Bank. So you have to do a little bit of research, a little bit of recon, and make sure that they have what you're looking for before you pay or do a 7-day free access like this. So they do usually require a credit card to do a free trial. So make sure that you're keeping that in mind. Newspapers.com, again, this is a paid website. It is logging me in, but what's kind of funny, I have a personal account, but I can't access my personal account when I'm at the library. I have to be off the Wi-Fi to access my own. It's very odd. So if you have your own and you want to access it, you need to access it from home and not here. We have a different version. And newspapers.com, they have a publisher's edition. Let me put it that way. It's a little bit of a grab of a little bit more money. So we here at the Allen County Public Library have the regular standard newspapers.com. We do not have the publisher's edition. I personally do, which is why I sometimes have to get off Wi-Fi in order to access it, which is how I know that. So there's some information that you can find through newspapers that you really do want to do a quick search of. And then newspaper archive. Again, you're going to find a lot of different ones. So you can go into publications and see what publications they even have and make sure that it's something that would be worth it to you. Or even write down a bunch of different publications that you want to look at for the next time you go to a library that has access. Contact the libraries near you, see what they have access to. Free is my favorite 4-letter word, so let's find the free stuff. Now, speaking of free, Chronicling America. This is done by the Library of Congress. It is a large database of different newspapers. You can do a search here. It is a little bit more clunky than perhaps newspapers.com or newspaper archive, but you can put in a location and you can be very specific about the years. I'm going to do something early. I'm just going to do Hamilton. So once you do a quick search, you're going to get these different papers. And then that's when you want to say, okay, perhaps this is the one I was looking for. And so once it pulls up, you can then zoom in and say, okay, it's talking about Fort Hamilton, not a person, but that's awesome. So you want to make sure that you're playing around with this and seeing what you can find. Make sure that if it's an older newspaper, some of the letters are going to be a little bit different. And you have to remember that it's OCR. So it's not going to be perfect with newsprint. Newsprint is a little bit iffy sometimes. There can be smears, the letters can be off. Whoever was setting the printer that day could have had a bad day, not had enough coffee, and misspelled things. So you have to do different search terms as well to try to find what you can discover through this. You can also look and see what newspapers even exist. This is the US newspaper directory. So this is even to see if they exist, and they'll tell you. They will tell you where the newspapers are located. They will tell you what library to contact for the specific newspaper you are looking for. So this is an incredible resource for anybody doing genealogy research. Elefind, this one is a great little find. I like that. You can go into list of titles and see what is in here as well. This is completely free. It starts off with the National Library of Australia. So if you're doing any Australian research, this is a place to start. And then it's going to go through and go to different locations. And you can see that Chronicling America is included in here. So you could just go to Elefind and skip Chronicling America, but I do like to search both because you never know what's going to come up where. but there are definitely different collections in here that are not in Chronicling America. So check Ella Find. And then the ancestor hunt. I do enjoy going through these. These are the newspaper links. This is a privately run website. And so what you can do is pick a location. And today we're going to New Mexico for fun. And you can find where the different newspapers are. So it's going to tell you statewide, Chronicling America, and then it's going to go through and tell you other historical newspapers and where to find them, including Google News Archive. A lot of people forget that there's newspapers there. So make sure to check all of these for your newspapers. Okay, flying through military records. Military records are so interesting and sometimes a little bit more difficult to find. So the first website is Fold3. Now, Fold3 is a Ancestry-owned website, and I don't know why, but when I click on that link, it likes to go there. Okay, so it's logging me into the library edition at the Allen County Public Library. So we have this, it's an Ancestry website, and what it's going to do is it's going to bring up different pieces of Fold3 military, but then there's also interesting pieces of history in here beyond military. So you have a Native American collection. There's non-military stuff in here. It's not just military. My colleague Elizabeth recently did a presentation on Fold3. I would highly recommend watching that if you're curious about what else you can find in Fold3. But just remember that more recent military documents are harder to get a hold of. Okay, we have the National Archives. National Archives. There are some pieces of information that you can find online, but mostly you're going to be requesting information from the National Archives. So you can request veteran service records here yourself. Now, the thing is that the more recent military records, so maybe that World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, there is a good possibility that those were destroyed in a fire at the National Archives. Now, there are other records that help piece together what is missing there. So you want to kind of look and see what you can find. Always do a request for those discharge papers to begin with. Those are the personnel records where the fire was. And then you want to see what other records might exist. So maybe there are records about where your family member went to another country. Maybe there's passenger lists for the different ships that they went off on, or maybe there are orders, maybe there are medical records. You never know what you can find until you start asking questions and exploring. Now, you can explore through the documents as well, but this is an incredibly difficult website. I will tell you that right now. And I could probably spend all day telling you about National Archives, and we don't have time. So that's going to have to be another program. But if you have a specific question, make sure to contact us and ask. All right, we also have the Soldiers and Sailors database for the Civil War. This is done by the National Park Service. So this is kind of an interesting location to find that. But you can go in here and you can actually search for different soldiers. You can put in a search for a name, or you can narrow down by a location. So let's go to Tennessee, and we're going to go to Confederacy, and we're going to say it's artillery, and we're just going to scroll and say this is our guy. So now you have a summary of there's a private ranking in and out, and then we can go to this where we can learn a little bit more about Rice's battery and what experiences they might have had. So this is just a quick summary. It's not going to tell you everything that they went through, but it's going to give you a good indication of what your ancestor could have gone through. Okay, some more sources. We're flying through these. Okay, so the next thing you want to know is that you can go to USGenWeb. This is a free website. And what this is I like to call it boots on the ground. It's people in these specific locations trying to find materials to help other researchers. So we're going to go ahead and do California, and you can see that it is a specific page. Every page for every state is different. You can see that there's a state coordinator, etc. You can scroll down and see what types of information they have, etc. But we're going to go to a county's list, and we're going to see which county we want to go to. And it looks like some of them need adoption, so make sure you're checking to see that the county you live in is adopted. And we're going to go into Napa County for fun. And so this is going to give us some information. We have a table of contents. You can do queries, so you can ask questions. There's message boards. You can contact people specifically. But the table of contents is incredibly helpful because you can find information that perhaps you're not finding anywhere else online. So you want to make sure that you are looking to see what is available. Again, these are boots on the ground researchers that possibly have access to the local repositories that you don't have access to. I see somebody's asking what the adopt me means. That means those counties don't have somebody working on them. So Orange County, California, somebody is not in charge of that. So they are looking for someone to be in charge of Orange County, California. And many states are like that. Many states have counties that need adoption or want somebody to be in charge of those websites. So that's something that each of you could work on. The Allen County Public Library, you need to make sure that you know what we have. Very quickly, if you go to our resources, there are free databases that you can go through. You can search our free databases up here as well. If I go back one, you can go to our family history archives. If you go to our family history archives, Family Search and Internet Archive are actively digitizing books in our collection. So you want to make sure that you are checking those out to see what is online already. You can find more about our website on our YouTube page. The one-step portal for online genealogy is by Steve Morris. This is an incredible website, especially for census research, especially if you're having trouble finding somebody on that 1950 census. You can also find information on immigration. So Ellis Island, Castle Garden, and other ports, they do like to help you find information. So it even leads you to Ancestry or Family Search. You can find calendars and see what the calendar conversions are, different alphabet, etc. So this is an incredible resource for doing genealogy research. And honestly, any census program I give, this is at the top of my list of places to go. And then Cindy's list. Many of you might have heard of this. This is a great place. I would like to call this a catalog of links. So basically what it is you can go in here and say, okay, I'm going to the categories. I want to know what links are available for newspapers. Okay, so we can click on newspapers, maybe. There we go. And then you can see what is here. So we have an index. Okay, I'm going to go to I. And then it's going to go through the different I newspapers, and a lot of them look like index. So you want to make sure that you're looking and seeing what you can find. You can also search inside if you're looking for something specific. All right. My greatest tip is to get creative. So when you run up to a brick wall, and a brick wall in genealogy research is a point that you can't seem to get past. Perhaps it's somebody that's not showing up in the records. You want to look for those new places. You want to Google search. You want to call places, email places. You want to utilize all of the libraries, historical societies, genealogical societies. You want to look at all of the different places that you might be able to get information. Go to places, call places. But most of all, ask for help. Librarians want to help you. They want you to be successful. So make sure that you're asking questions. Even if you don't know what the question is, try to at least reach out and tell people what you're looking for. Just wanted to make sure that you guys also know about organization. So make sure that you are looking for something that is helpful for you. What is helpful for you may not work for the next person. We get a lot of questions of customers that come in and ask, hey, what sort of software do you use? And it's kind of like, well, I use one thing, but my colleague uses another. Actually, none of us use the same software. I don't believe any of my colleagues use the same software as the other. And what that is we're basically just trying to do research that it works best for us. And so you need to make sure to find what works best for you as well. So there's just a couple suggestions of places you might go, the top 10 reviews or the genealogy guide for free software. But the thing is, you can find different software reviews based on what you are looking for. So you may not even want to use the ones I suggested in the handout. You may want to look for something else. I know that Legacy is in the 9.0 version. I just didn't feel like changing the 7.0 image, Larry. Sometimes when you do a presentation, you just don't feel like changing it. But I will tell you that my personal favorite is Tribal Pages. It is a little bit different. The reason I like using it is because it is something that is online, and it is something that can be utilized for my family members anywhere in the world. They can access my family tree. Now, the thing is it's behind a password. So it is password protected. And that is something that is incredibly important to me and my family. So I can log in. I can go into my family tree. It wants me to put in my access code. And so I'm in my family tree. And so I have all of this information in here. I started it in 2006 and I'm still using it today. So I can get in here, I can put in pictures, I can put in all sorts of pieces of information. I can find people by the last names. I can look at what events are coming up, people's birthdays or anniversaries. I can look up how people are related to one another. So I can just pick somebody in here. I can view ancestors, descendants, I can do reports. And then in order to even edit, I have a different password. So I'd have to go into the admin and log in there. So my ancestors can't even, my family members can't even make edits to my family tree, which I personally prefer. The other thing you can do is still create binders. A lot of people still prefer to have the paper, the physical item in front of them, and that's perfectly acceptable too. It's however you want to do your research. It is what makes the most sense for you and your family members. Can you import info from Ancestry to Tribal Pages? Yes. It doesn't bring over the documents, but it brings over the information easily. I've done that back and forth several times. And you also want to keep things in multiple places. So you want to have those files in different places. You want to keep your information in multiple locations. Otherwise, you might lose it. So lots of copies keeps things safe. If you have any further questions, please feel free to shoot us an email. Genealogy@acpl.info is how you can get a hold of us. We are able to help anybody anywhere you live. So genealogy@acpl.info. So contact us with questions, but otherwise, thank you guys for joining us today. I'm so glad you have taken time out of your busy schedule to join us. And thank you, everybody. Hopefully we'll see you at Thursday's program and all of our upcoming programs in August. So thank you and have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye, everybody.